Hi, I'm Peter Reynolds, and welcome to Pros and Conversations, the podcast that explores what it takes to be successful, whether you're from the world of business, science, or the arts. Today, we're going to be talking about video production and the importance of it in your overall marketing strategy. And to join me is someone who knows all about marketing. That's marketing consultant Damon Adachi from Sevenfold Marketing. How you doing, Damon?
Great. I'm glad to be here to play the number 2 to your Dr. Evil as we get into this topic. Should be fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because, video production obviously can seem quite overwhelming because, when clients come to me and say, how much does a video cost? I'll say, how long is a piece of string? There are so many factors involved. A 30-second Super Bowl ad can run, into the millions of dollars. So how do you balance something that's going to be effective for your client without breaking their budget?
Exactly. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I used to have a video production company of my own. That was my first kick at being an entrepreneur. So this was probably 13, 14 years ago. So we didn't have the benefit of people really understanding the impact of video that we do today and why investing in it makes so much sense. But we should probably talk to a real expert.
Absolutely. And we definitely have a real expert to talk to. Joining us today is Kevin Louise, and he is a cinematographer and owner of Capian Studios. Welcome to Pros and Conversations, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, maybe we could just jump in by giving the audience just a little sense of who you are and your background.
Awesome. Yeah, sure. So I've been running Capian now since 2012, but my background is pretty diverse. I started at the age of 15, worked for a local access television studio here in town, went to Columbia College, Chicago. It was at the time the world's largest film school. Went out to LA. Pulled wires, came back to Massachusetts, also ended up working on some TV shows and some industry films here in the props department, went to corporate, and then I did guided travel. And that was kind of interesting. So I was the head of a video department, so I'd get to go travel on other people's dime. I went to Portugal, Spain, England, France, did Mexico City, so a bunch of different places. And then I got burnt out on that. And I just said, you know what, I've been doing this for long enough. I can probably do this on my own, and started doing the video production side. But then within the last 5 years, I've really gotten heavily into the marketing element of it. And some of the distribution sides. I'm a big advocate of SEO. So, I've kind of dispersed myself, and then we also do an aerial component as well, which is kind of an element of our niche that we can provide, which also includes some of civil engineering mapping as well. So
cool.
We have our irons in the fire in a couple of different areas, which is the key is to really diversify yourself. But yeah, that's a little bit of my background.
That's really interesting. I think particularly when you can see the evolution of the business, and now with drones, that idea of telling your story, as we say, telling your story from a different perspective, and it's fascinating. I'm interested to know, Kevin, that we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs here on the show, and that motivation to go from, as you said, traveling on someone else's dime, going in, doing your 9 to 5. What was the motivation to say, I'm going to take on 2, 3, 4 times as much responsibility because I want to start my own company? What was the motivation to do that?
Corporate bureaucracy is, there's a saying, it's know thyself, right? And, I'm a team player as much as possible. But there's also, I found that the corporate structure is just completely, it's not modernized. It doesn't make sense. And we're even starting to realize that, post-COVID, that we can work from wherever we want to. A lot of Pandora has been released, right? You can't put it back in the box. So now everybody knows, hey, I can work from home. I could live in Antarctica and work for some sort of corporation. But for me, I felt like I work better from the outside in than working from the inside and then just getting rambled up in all of the day-to-day. I would do more meetings than I would actually do work. I'd go sit in boardroom meetings and talk about all this stuff. And by the time we'd start with lofty ideas, and then they would just get whittled and whittled and whittled. And I'm just like, this is just not for me. I'll go in. I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to doing design work or even some ideas. But I always try to stick with what we set out to do. And I felt in the corporate, the atmosphere, mediocrity was basically the standard. It was basically we'd go to our greatest hits and we would just try to repeat that, or we'd look to the left and right of us and say, hey, what is our competitor doing? Let's kind of copy that in some aspect. So I just got burnt out on that. And I said, I can do this on my own. I can be a consultant. I can come in from an outside commercial agency and then help some of these companies with a fresh perspective. And I think that that's why I did what I did. There's other elements too, but I do miss it in regard of like getting that consistent paycheck and your 401k and then possibly a pension or all that as an entrepreneur is just gone, so you got to find other creative ways to supplement that. But yeah, that's why I did what I did, because it's know thyself. It's, knowing who you are as a person, how you operate best and what you bring to the table and how you go about that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. That corporate structure can be kind of stifling to somebody that has a creative drive. When I was in that world, I would take a look at some of our printed material and collateral and say, this is really off mark because we live and breathe this and we're in the company. So how about this? And, the higher ups would say, no, we can't listen to you. You're not an outside voice. You're not somebody that we're contracting to tell us what's right and wrong. And from within, it's so easy to get stifled by people that have a project management job that say, I have to hire somebody and I have to pay them money to get expertise. It was kind of silly, right? So I agree. I also decided that from the outside, it made more sense. But I'm really surprised to hear you echo that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a true thing. I think it's all three of us. I can tell immediately. I haven't interacted with you much, but I know that Peter for sure is a creative, and I'm assuming you're the same. So it's like I've got my buddy who's a partner of mine, or helped me form Capian when it started off, and he never worked the corporate structure. He'd always worked from the outside in, and now he's in the corporate. And I said, man, you're gonna feel it. And now he tells me, he's like, I come home, I don't even want to shoot. I don't even want to do anything for myself, for fun, for video. And I'm like, that is just like a dagger, like you gotta, we love what we do, I'm assuming, right? And if we're getting dragged down by, corporate and all of their BS, like it kills us. So I think that there is something that's unanimous or shared between us that we all kind of acknowledge that we work best from the outside in.
And you get reminders every so often. I know for myself, even over the course of the pandemic, you have clients where I start to think to myself, gosh, it'd be kind of nice to be maybe their in-house video person and that 9 to 5, as you were saying. Mm-hmm. But then I literally just had a meeting with a client where there were 9 people in that meeting to make a decision. And as soon as I finished that meeting, I said, no, it's not for me. It's because you're 100% right about this idea about start with your greatest hits. The do not sort of step across that line, and it can be very stifling.
So I have a question for you, Kevin. I've seen your website. It's very impressive. And I've seen your own promotional videos that you've done for your own company. Touching back to that last comment, how do you keep the passion to be creative when promoting yourself? Because I struggle with that. I have a bit of the shoemaker's son syndrome where I work hard and put energy in being creative for my clients. And then when I have time to work on the business and not in the business, I'm tapped. But you guys are doing a great job at it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so tough. Like, so I think, I don't know if for my own stuff, it's necessarily creative. It's certainly informative. I mean, I guess maybe it's creative. I've got a 2019 demo reel that needs to be updated, and I've just been procrastinating. I've got all this content, and I'm like looking at it like it's like a mountain, and I'm like, oh man, I got to climb this mountain to put this all together. And but anyway, thank you, I appreciate that. How do I stay creative? I don't know. It's just a matter of for my own stuff. It's just a matter of I look at it as a target or a goal that I need to succeed. You always have to stay current with our own stuff. If you neglect it, then it becomes dry. And also from Google, just from an SEO and a ranking standpoint, they like to see fresh content, whether that's on the front page or the back page, end of your stuff. So, yeah, it's I don't know if I have an direct answer for that. It's just more of just a passion, I guess. I don't know. I always like to put my best foot forward, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my own stuff. So, I'll labor over something. But that video, the marketing video, kind of introing all that stuff, a lot of people call that in the business, they call it a video business card. And basically what it is like you need to do a couple different things. You need to ask a question, create a solution, provide, a little bit of samples, and then give a little bit of an element of personal touch of who you are. Because at the end of the day, there's so many different, avenues you can go for picking a video production company, but do you want to work with that person? So you have to show a little bit of yourself. And then I'm kind of an analytical guy, so I add in a little bit of stats here and there just to kind of pique people's interest. So I think it's just a balance of a lot of those elements to kind of handshake down the line with some flow. But I would certainly encourage anybody who runs a video production company, marketing agency, any of that we need to live by the sword and die by the sword. We need to, if we are creating videos for a company, we also need to do that for ourselves. Because we need to recognize it, and we need to put in the effort to not neglect our website, because it's more than just a brochure. It is a means to traffic in, and then filtration is huge.
Yeah, I was very impressed. To echo what Damon was saying, the fact that a lot of websites, mine included, you talk about the services that you provide, you talk about, the benefits, and also you show examples of your work. But I really like the fact that you were sort of drilling down on the metrics, that you sort of felt the need to not only let clients know about your services, but to sort of educate them, about the benefits. And can you talk a little bit about your decision to do that?
Absolutely. So like I said, I'm kind of an analytical person. So when I started to really kind of dive into video marketing on the distribution side of things and setting up campaigns and doing ad buys and such, I started to really focus in on what's the ROI, return on investment, what's the ROAS, return on ad spend, dollar for dollar. So I thought that was kind of crucial, and that the kind of the aha moment for me is when I was privy to information with a school system that I worked for. I still work for. I work for a couple of different school systems, and that's kind of like one of my niches. So I started to understand what the state provides to the school systems per student. And once I understood that, which is about $18,000 to $20,000 per student per year, and then I started to capture the data as to how many people signed up as a result of one of the videos. I said, "Oh, these videos are quite valuable. They're worth it." So where I bring that into to play is that it's about valuing yourself constantly in this line of business. We're racing to the bottom. We've got either companies that don't know the worth of video altogether, or they do know the worth of video and they're trying to pull a fast one on you and basically trying to work you all the way down, and then using a kid who doesn't run an agency, who just some random kid off the street who's given them $1,000 figure, and then trying to use their numbers to work you down. So once you start capturing data and start capturing all the metrics and the worth and the return, you start changing the conversation with clients. It starts to say, hey, this is what these tools can potentially do for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be that way, but there's kind of a broad, a spectrum. I can kind of say, if you throw X amount of dollars at this, you should probably see this, and it's industry dependent. So like, for instance, the school systems, obviously, right? If I go and do a $5,000 to $10,000 video, that's a drop in the bucket in regards to if they just get one student, right? Now that $20,000 that they get from the state every year for 4 years, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's, profit. These are public entities, right? This is paying students, infrastructure, or teachers, infrastructure, et cetera, right? Utilities. But what I guess I'm trying to get at is that it becomes less of a dollar figure, but now we're using video to attract the right clients or the right leads, right? Because a student, no matter what student it is, it's $20,000 per year. But a good student, somebody who is going to elevate your brand, now statistically they're actually escalating what your statistics are for your actual whole school. You start getting the right kids in that school, that's worth more than any $20,000 figure a year that you can throw at it. So these are conversations that you start having. That's why that's kind of the origins of why I started to start paying attention to some of these metrics. And it really does help, I would say, but it doesn't help for everybody. So, for instance, like it's industry dependent. So if, I was approached by a coffee shop, right? How much do they make per coffee? $5 a cup, right? I know that I can't go in there and charge $10,000 for a video, because how many cups of coffee are they going to have to sell to be able to, you know what I mean? So some of the industries just don't make sense, right? So you can't necessarily, so I just completely disregard. And that's where I was talking about filtration on your website. Your website needs to act as a gatekeeper. So I actually you can't just email me. I actually have a form, and you have to select variables, and then then you can contact me. Either way, I mean, there's no if statements on my contact form. They could go and they could say, I want 10 videos and I want them to be an hour a piece, and I want to pay $1,500, right? Obviously, when I get that, I'm just going to be like, no, sorry. But at least I know, at least I'm having that conversation up front, and I can just be like, hey, sorry, I'm not the one for you. Maybe you can take a look at this guy or something. But it's all symbiotic. It's all handshaking one another. So that's why I started to bring in the metrics, because then it's not a justification. It's an education. Mm-hmm. It's saying, hey, this is what you could make on your product. You could actually earn and then some. And then there's also the utility behind some of these videos as well. It's beyond just what that direct conversion is. Now you can use the utility. You could go out to, you could use the video for grant writing. You could use it for municipality, for state board, if you were trying to go and build a new project, a new development or something like that. So there's a tons of utility behind video. So all of this is like a marriage of bringing in the stats, bringing in the engagement, bringing in the ROI, the ROS. Does that? Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but I hope that answers it. One thing I'd like to add is, and you hit a good point, is about dollar figures for ad buys, right? If a video if a video is just on the website, and like you said, if it's just the amount of employees that have watched the video, that's no good, right? So sometimes with like $0 or very minimal ad buys, instead of doing ad buys, we do little horn, big horn. So that would be through PR efforts. So we would go to actual Facebook groups and pages, and then reach out and organizations and get them to share the video, and then they disperse it. And sometimes that's paid, sometimes that's not, but it's actually a much smaller cost than it would be to actually do like a paid Facebook push. And that has been helpful too. So, or reaching out to, public figures in your region as well, and to push the video. So that's a little bit on the PR side of things. And I think that can be a very strong component, especially when you do ad buys on top of that and merge those two efforts together. You can have some really great success. So I think, but the meat and potatoes of any of this stuff, before I even start a video, I say, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish? Like I've got a PSA that I'm about to do, and it's a very controversial topic. And I said, what's your end goal? Like, this is great that we're doing this, but what do you want to come of this? And we're not going to change this issue overnight. So what do you want to do? And they kind of looked at me and they're like, we didn't really think about that. And I said, what I would suggest is that, hey, we do this video, but now every week you go and you do a circle. Like a group, like a breakdown talk with all of these kids, right? And get them talking about certain topics. And then maybe even have a parent night where the parents come in, and then they have a round table. And then do on top of this video, and then get some sort of, activism going on. So you have to start with a problem and then figure out a solution. And the video is a component of that, but it's not the say-all be-all. You have to have an end goal.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that myself in marketing initiatives that companies take on, and they think that you're doing right. Just by having a video, you're doing right. And then they forget that question of, what are you trying to achieve here? What is your objective? And what do your efforts point, how much of what you're doing actually points to that objective? So it's great to hear that you're adding that layer of strategy for your clients. And like Peter said, it's not necessarily a line item on the invoice, but it's a value add that keeps them coming back for more. So we've talked about the value of video marketing and the statistics that back it up that help you from a sales perspective in convincing clients to move forward. But I think, we know this. We are also in the market. We are on our Facebook feeds and looking at videos and watching the videos on the Amazon product posts. And, we recognize that video is super powerful. What do you say to people that say, but I can do it myself?
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Pros and Conversations is brought to you by For the Record Productions, providing video production services to corporate and nonprofit clients for over 20 years. To learn more about how we can help your business, visit videosthatmatter.ca. And by the Business Alliance, a professional peer group that helps you grow your business through networking, collaboration, and sound advice. To learn more about how to become a member, visit jointhealliance.biz.
Very good question. I actually did a whole podcast and an article on this very topic, which is, there's tiered content, and Peter and I were just talking about that, like low tier, mid tier, high tier. And I think that they all have their strengths and weaknesses. The accessibility of a cell phone and being able to do fast content and blanket content on an almost hourly basis, if you really wanted to, there's something to be said about that. And it's truly powerful. However, the people who are doing that stuff, they're not, video marketing strategists, right? They're not thinking about end goals. They're just thinking about blanketing content, right? And sometimes it can be wildly off brand. Then you have to, sometimes it could be damaging off brand, right? And then you got to pick up the pieces to be able to repair some of that. But I wouldn't poo-poo being able to do video content. Actually, I think I'm starting as I get older to embrace having a company do cell phone content as long as it's on brand. I don't look at it as a threat in terms of, hey, this is cutting into my slice of the pie. I would say it's tiered content. So if I guess if I were having a conversation with a person and they were not sold on this, on mid-tiered video content, and they were like, I can just do it myself. I don't know if that's the right, I wouldn't get into a confrontation with trying to sell them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They might not be who I want to talk to. But what I would say to them is they're like, if they're kind of on that fence and they're like, yeah, I can do it, but what are the benefits of you coming in? And that's where I would start talking about writing. And that's what I talked to Peter about in an email, is good writing. I think the best content, performing content that I've seen on our end is stuff that's been written well. And from a script standpoint, even if it's a loose script or logistical, I think that has been the best performing stuff. And you're not going to get that from somebody who's doing in-house video cell phone content. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff is trendy, gimmicky. It's all based on visual cuts. And like, I've seen like girls like throwing t-shirts and then they snap back onto their body and all that. That's great. But everybody is doing that. Everybody's doing that. So what separates you from the group? When you're scrolling through TikTok and you're seeing all the same trendy stuff, like how does that, remove you from the pack? So that's kind of the conversation I would have along with good writing. And good writing is such, as I get older, I'm just finding that good writing is like very hard to come by, and it has to be a singular voice. I actually just met with one of my old coworkers the other day and we were talking about it. He was a writer. And he said that before he left the company that we worked with, he wrote a very emotional piece and they mothballed it. And I actually was able to see it and it was great. And they mothballed it because, they're afraid. I think that a lot of companies are afraid to have a strong voice, a strong emotional voice. And I think that if you embrace the humanity of who we are, I think that you will find you'll have very successful campaigns. We had one of the companies that we work with who does cell phone content on a day-to-day basis. We're their mid-tier vendor, and then they've got an higher end vendor that they're not really seeing the performance of, but I won't talk about that. So what they do is they've acknowledged basically that one of our videos that we wrote for them is their highest performing video they've ever had. Even to a year later, they still haven't hit that performance. And that was because I've got a whole article and a podcast on that, and it's called Writing from the Heart. Basically I took elements of myself and my own struggles around weight as a kid, and I put elements of myself into a story that hit the community. And I'm talking like women. This was a story for women, and all of the comments were all echoing the same thing. It's just like how it brought them to tears. And it was extremely emotional, and that they related. And here a guy is writing about women, social issues, right? If they had known that, would they have reacted the same way? And that's a very good question. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that you have to have a voice, an inner voice, and be very connected. And good writing will always it'll always shine. It's just a matter of if you have a good performer as well, and then obviously the edit and all that jazz.
So how do you roll that up into your value proposition when you're presenting yourself as a video production company and you don't even talk about any of those values? I know Peter and I have had this conversation about his title should be creative director, not cinematographer or videographer. That's a really tough thing to get across. And, podcasts like this are a great way to open that door to showing people more of the true value. But is that the sort of same struggle that you have? I certainly experience that.
Sometimes I sit with people and it won't even be in the industry. Like, I've shown like that particular video I was talking about, I've shown that to schools. And I'm talking like girls are like taking their shirts off and having just a bra. And I'm showing this to a private school. But here's the thing is that I set it up and I say, listen, this is what I've done in this industry. Take a look at it and let me, and they're always like, wow, okay. And it might not be related to that industry, but I think that they can feel it. I'm a big believer in, less words, show more. If I can show something, then it just kind of comes across. So I don't necessarily, a lot of the time when people come to me, it's either through a referral or they've landed on my page and they already know that once after seeing my stuff that they want to work with me based on some of the stuff. So I don't really have to do a lot of hard selling. And I don't go up against other bids and stuff like that every once in a great while. Like, usually when people approach me, they already know that they want to work with me. So it's not a lot of selling on that regard, but
it's challenging,
Yeah,
I think
it's
as somebody, the idea of how we're wearing so many hats running our businesses. And you and I both started off, as cinematographers, as shooters. And then we became video producers. And you become a writer because a script needs to be written. And it often just gets rolled in. And I find that so challenging to separate that. And I've told the story to Damon where, I was hired by a community in just north of Toronto called Etobicoke. And they were basically looking to promote that area of town as a place to live, work, and play. And I was just shooting their video. They were just paying me to shoot the video. And during the course of it, we needed to sort of call it something, what was this initiative? And I just came up with this idea of it was the one place you needed. And, the one place to work, the one place to live, the one place to play. And ONE ended up being Opportunity North Etobicoke. Well, they took this thing and went crazy with it. And it was there on their literature and it was everywhere. And I got exactly nothing for it. And
that's tough.
And just
personal
satisfaction doesn't pay the mortgage, but so it becomes challenging. And what I've done often now on shoots is that I will separate the position of you need to bring in a camera person, but separate that from director, as a line item, because as a director, even if I'm filming on the same day, as a director, I'm the one who's coming up with the questions to ask, who's drawing out the best responses, the most honest responses from the interviewees. That's a skill that a client needs to pay for. Yeah. And if people come to me about cost and everything, I say, well, if you just want me to send a shooter, okay, and you have to deal with all the questions and the performance and the live coaching, if you want to deal with all that yourself, great, I can just send a shooter. But if you want me, okay, to use that skill, then it's a line item.
Yeah, I roll a lot of that. Well, we talked about statement of work obviously earlier, which I think is a very important element to any sort of proposals. And I do have, some of the breakouts as to what's provided, but I think, no, that's a good point. I mean, it's so funny how everybody does the little nuances of their business a little differently. And, but you're totally right. Is that I saw a quote once. It was like, you're not paying me for the 1 hour of service. You're paying me for the 25 years that it took me to get to that part. Right. Which is good. It's so true. And it's just we are constantly undervalued in our career, in our profession, and the amount of hats that we have to wear to be able to bring value to the table. It's a lot. So it's just, if you can if you can, convey that to people, I think that, and then show the worth at the end, at the end of the campaign, then I think you're that much, you've instilled confidence, and then you can continue to keep them as a client.
And I think a lot of the intangibles that we're talking about here that add value, that make what you do great, are the things that keep us in business, where a lot of smaller and less creative and less strategic companies will flounder. So it's just like you said, the 25 years is your testament to what you deliver. And it's exactly why I started in video. I just love the opportunity to make that engagement, that emotional connection to your audience in a real way. Like in what I do in graphic design, it's supposed to be pleasing. It's supposed to be effective and clear. But with video, man, you can go in so many other directions and really, emotionally interact with people and develop community and develop grassroots movement and develop trust and loyalty in your marketplace. So much value there. And I'm jealous of both of you because I don't get to play in that sandbox every day.
Well, just pick up the camera and start doing it again, man. I say in the world of, so I forgot to tell you, I have a background where I worked for a web agency. So that's where also the whole marketing element came into play. Because I was mentored by a really smart gentleman, Mark Medeiros of Slocum Design Studio. And they were, I think, number 2 in WordPress design for a while. So that's kind of another element of where marketing became really important to me. But in the world of marketing, video is king because it's the culmination of your sights, your sounds, and the human condition, right? The human condition, you can't convey that in print or radio. You can only do that when you merge visuals and sound and then storytell. And that's where you get the human condition. You get the emotion component out of it. So it's very difficult to do it when they're independent of one another. So that's why video is king if it's done correctly. But you should do it, man. You should add that component back in.
I'm always promoting video content for small business owners and entrepreneurs because in that arena, they are the brand and they have to be connected to their audience. And they're facing tons of competition. Like the perfect example is a real estate agent. They're a dime a dozen. But the reason why you work with one is because you connect with one and you feel comfortable with one. And if you're not getting your personality out to your market in that way, flyers are not going to sell you a house, right? So I'm a strong proponent of it in our business alliance group that we have in the networking group that Peter and I belong to. We talk about it greatly because we know that that's super effective, and it can be effective on a smaller budget as well. You're talking about mid-tier, that's where you live. Even in the lower tiers, you might be able to do some of it yourself. But get a partner that you can strategize with to make sure that you're on point and you're on brand and your writing is good and your ideas are unique. And it's super powerful. I agree with you. It is king in the marketing spectrum.
One thing I wanted to just add real quick, Peter, is you talked about the networking group. And this kind of just put a light bulb in me. For business entrepreneurs out there that might be listening to this right now, my best suggestion for you in terms of generating leads is not emails or automation. I do actually do LinkedIn Helper and do some automation there and stuff to generate leads. The best lead generation I have ever had, and I reflect back on the snowballing effect, was joining a community. And I don't just mean in a networking atmosphere like a business chamber or anything like that. I actually belong to a CrossFit gym. And so I think about the amount of clients that I generated from that, and that was not the goal. I went in to CrossFit just to better myself, and it ended up with lifelong friends. And I think that once you build that level of trust, they start saying, hey, Kevin, I know you do this. Let me refer you to my company that I work for. And I actually, unfortunately, because my health conditions, I haven't been able to go back to the CrossFit gym. But I think about how much I've actually grown as a result of that. And if you just go into a community just for the community aspect, not because that's why I don't do business chambers, because I feel like everybody's constantly trying to sell to one another. I don't know, at least at first impression, I did a chamber and it wasn't for me. But like when I went into the CrossFit gym, I'm just there for myself. And then I just built these relationships with everybody. And then they just so happen to end up referring me. And I think I mean, I can't even count how many businesses I've gotten as a result of belonging to a community. So I think for, entrepreneurs, like go join something that's completely unvideo related and make friends. And that's how you're going to be able to grow.
I wanted to go back a little bit to what you said about having a voice. And I think that is it's undervalued. Both from companies, they tend to want to be sort of very neutral. Mm-hmm. This idea of we're not we don't want if there's zero chance of offending anybody. And I always say if there's zero chance of offending anybody, there's also zero chance of impressing anyone, because you haven't taken any chances. And when you're particularly on your website, and you talked about this, about getting yourself out there and putting yourself on the screen and talking directly to your audience, I think a lot of companies out there, they make their website just a postcard because there's zero chance of not being what somebody is looking for. It's like you said, if there's a women's organization that is looking to, create a series of public service announcements, would they be turned off seeing you, coming up and saying, "Hi, I'm Kevin Louise, and this is my company." So I think that a lot of people out there might think, I'm just going to keep it very neutral. I'm not going to have anybody step forward. But I think that's a mistake, because if you do that, then you literally just blend in with everybody else around you. I think you need to take a stand. You need to say, this is what I do. This is what I don't do. And there's enough people out there. I've talked to Damon about this. The work that I do is that sort of documentary style. That it is, I came from a world working with nonprofit organizations where it was all people telling their own stories in their own words. It was not scripted. It was not slick. That is my strength. And I tell people that right off the bat. And will people who are looking for that slick commercial, will they go somewhere else? Yes, they will. But I want them to, because that is not my strength. And I think it's really important, whatever business you're in, to have a sort of a strong voice. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's and you hit the nail on the head, and I pointed at it. What I do and what I don't do, right? That is, like the other day, I got a call, and I could do it. I could, but I'm not. And it was a call for a 3-month time-lapse project. And, I think I have time-lapse as a component, but not long-term. So yeah, it's about I think on your other podcast, it was talking about niching down. I think that's important. And I also think that what you said is, about playing it safe is yeah, granted, if you try to appeal to everyone, but then also, you're going to get the riffraff too. Like, you don't want to be being hit up for, $1,000 videos or less than that, all the time either. So it's about finding your voice, and having a strong voice. One thing that drives me nuts though is that there is, you do have to kind of be a little formulaic with your website for SEO purposes, and that drives me nuts. I would never, I don't want to have, it says video production and marketing at the top of my page. I don't want that, but I recognize that I have to. In Dartmouth, Massachusetts, I think it says at the bottom. I want to have a slick image, and I want it to say Cappian right at the top, and that's it. You know what I mean? I'm the type of guy that hands you a black, well, here we go. See how, I don't know if you probably can't see that. It's just black. Yeah, the Capian logo, and then little. Anyway, so
I'm surprised it has any writing on it at all. The
it's a black
essentially,
card.
if you
Find
don't know how to get in touch with me, I don't want to hear from you. Okay.
But no, it's having that strong voice, being able to stand out from the crowd. I think from a design and Damon, I think you would agree with this. Is like from a graphic design standpoint, is like bold but conservative design elements. I play in purple.
Wow.
I like the color purple because I feel like it's underused in video. YouTube lately, like see my light behind it, YouTubers are using purple lately. But I was doing that long before like YouTubers were using that color. And then a little bit of elements of green, like neon greens. Those are design choices, but that all culminates into a voice about who you are, how you want to present yourself. So yeah, it's you definitely have to say who you are, and visually who you are, and what you do and what you don't do. And I think once you do that, then you can kind of narrow in and focus on who you want to service. And that's elements of a business plan, but that's also elements of just self-discovery and finding out what you do best. Like Peter, you talked about being in the nonprofits and doing documentary stuff. That's where you feel confident. That's where you feel that you can bring something to the table, and that's your bread and butter. And I think that, like, for me, my bread and butter is I've worked in school systems for so long. I can go into any school and I just need to wrap my head around who they are as their brand. And then once I know that and start talking with students and teachers, just like I'll always go and tour the school and kind of just get a feel, immerse myself in the school before I take them on. And then once I do that, then I can kind of find that voice, and it just kind of comes naturally, I suppose. But all of these, there's a certain formula, but then you change little variables here and there within the formula to make it work for that particular brand.
Yeah, I want to talk about that real quick. So you mentioned the SEO component. I'm not looking to promote my website, sevenfold.ca, but if you go to my website, sevenfold.ca, you'll see that it's very different. It's non-formulaic. It probably has negative SEO value, and I don't care, because my statement is I do things differently. I do things very outside the box and creatively, and it's more of a sales presentation. It's got, like you navigate it through it differently. It's very atypical, but if it's driving somebody away, they're not my client. And now we're back to filtering again, right? And if you're not saying something, you're saying nothing, and all of that. So I think we're all echoing the same sentiment there, but I think it's also especially challenging in video because the microscope is so sharp on your video, and one misstep, saying the wrong thing, meaning the wrong thing, that's where people are really paying attention is in video. So do you find that it's a dangerous line to walk sometimes in how you want to, go against the grain in some ways, or be a little more salacious, or God forbid controversial?
Are you talking about, well, yeah, so here's, are you talking about like almost like cancel culture or something like that?
Those are the words I was trying to work around.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, like, what's interesting is, like, I look at my portfolio, the clients that I have. I've got a private Catholic school. That's my school that I actually went to. I've got a public vocational school. I've got another vocational school. I got a public school. And then I've got product apparel it's girls with sports bras and tiny shorts. And then I've got an HVAC company. And I've got some like church. Why can't I think of the name of it? They do a pantry. That's what. I've got a bunch of different. There's more than that, obviously, but I got a bunch of, and the healthcare systems. I've got healthcare companies, right? So, I got a bunch of diverse, videos. I think what you do is they're verticals. Mm-hmm. You do landing pages, and specific to whatever that niche is, and kind of keep them separate. Obviously, on the main page, you're going to showcase your greatest hits, your best videos there. And I guess where I'm trying to go with this is about cancel culture, right? It's like one video might turn off so for instance, I've got the product apparel company, and then I've got the private high school that's a Catholic school, right? Those are diametrically opposed. Okay. But the thing is like, you can't, I don't think that, people who attend that high school are seeking out my page at the same time either. So I'm not necessarily afraid to share both of those videos on the homepage. I think people identify that, these things can live independent of one another. But in terms of the actual messaging inside the video, is that what you're talking about as well? In terms of, okay. So the messaging inside the video, yeah, I mean, like, if I were to align myself, so here's another thing, right? I also do law enforcement. Okay. Law enforcement's a big, right? Some people land on the spectrum of like defund the police. And then some people are like back the blue. I'm somewhere in the middle. I am, from a political standpoint, not to get into this, but I'm a centrist, right? I lean ever so slightly to the left, but I have a lot of fiscal conservative values as well at the same time. So, and then also I come from a background of law enforcement. My father is a special deputy, and both my parents are MPs. And my mother was, and now she works with law enforcement, and she runs Shield Behavioral, and she does first responders, like therapy with first responders. So that's kind of the connection there, right? Now, am I afraid to put law enforcement on my website? No, I'm not, because that's who I am. And if that turns you off, then you're probably not the one for me. Now, can I recognize that is a controversial topic? Absolutely. I think that there's good cops and there's bad cops, but I'm not afraid to showcase the good cops, right? There might be like 5% bad cops and 95% good cops, right? Who knows? I don't know what the statistics are. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that's who I am. Don't be afraid to show it. If that turns you off, that's not the person for you. That's just all I look at. It's that black and white.
And there's a difference. And there's a difference between that's who I am and it's going on my website and having your company called Shoot and Edit and the logo's a gun. So
okay, I'm the brand guy. I don't see a problem with this.
There's definitely a population that will gravitate towards that for sure. I think we were just joking about this, Damon and I, off camera. This idea of we all have our political views. There are some times that I think about what I'm posting on social media, because I know that I have clients that lean more conservative, and I'm not. I just temper what I'm saying, But I think that probably just common sense with all business, that you want to be true to who you are. Back to your point about filtering, if people are going to be upset, the fact that you've done a PSA that is body positive for women. If someone's going to be upset about that, you don't want to have anything to do with them. So if anything, you want to have that stuff on your website. So I think that it goes back to what we talked about having a strong voice, being true to who you are, being generally respectful of everyone. And I think that you're going to be well served by that.
Yeah. You can't service everyone. You can't service everyone. You're not for everyone. It's relationships. All of these interactions, you're creating videos for people, right? And tools and utility, but I might not be, and that's okay. That is okay if I'm not for you. But I think, I am a little conservative as to what I put out there. I put a funny thing out, and this is another thing that I'm starting to learn is don't be afraid to go and just do goofy videos for yourself. I did a video, Christine, I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook. Christine, my partner, she has got a T-Rex outfit, and we're like, put on it's an inflatable T-Rex thing, right? And she goes and she's snowblowing, right? And she's doing the whole stretch, right? And I made a funny video of that and I put it out there. That's just me being goofy, right? And is that anything related to my company? No. but I can recognize the fact that A, that's me, and B, it's good to not take yourself too seriously. And I ended up doing that video, and I put it out to a bunch of different social channels and for trafficking, and I got backlinks as a result of it, right? So that's another important thing is like outreach, doing stuff that you can get backlinks to your website and get some sort of buzz going. So, and people don't want to see. You're not going to get backlinks for your website based on, slick videos that you've done for another client. You got to do stuff for yourself, and it's got to be, you always have to give more than you're asking for. So like, I'm even hesitant to put my logo in the left-hand corner because it might feel like an advertisement, right? I just want to make a video for the video's sake and then let it get traction. It's a delicate balance, but you got to have fun. You got to do some 100%. Stuff for yourself as well.
Well, Peter, I don't envy you trying to pull out some great sound bites out of this one because there's so many of them. Kevin, it's been super enlightening. Where can people find you if they're looking for that mid-tier production quality support?
So you can find me at capianstudio.com, phonetic alphabet, C as in Charlie, A as in Apple, P as in Pinwheel, I as in Indian, O as in Ocean, N as in Nancy, studio.com.
Well, listen, I think we've really learned a lot as I think we talked about this idea. We've got enough content for 2 or 3 podcasts. But I think it all comes to this fact that video, is important when it comes to promoting your business, whether it's your brand, but it's important to have a marketing strategy behind it. And Kevin, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I have a face for radio, but we have the model of marketing with us today, and that was Damon Adachi. Damon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And of course, our guest today was Kevin Louise, and he is the owner and cinematographer for Capian Studios. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
My name's Peter Reynolds, and you've been listening to Pros and Conversations. See you next time.